So, guys, I want to talk about AEW Grand Slam and AEW Revolution. And what I want to say is that, no matter what Tony Khan says, and we all feel this way, was that they originally wanted to do a 50,000 seat arena. And ultimately, now they have like a 12,000 seat arena. And that's kind of why they're not turning this into a pay per view. They're making it a collision special. I mean, quite honestly, if they had 30 or 40,000 people in Brisbane, this would be a pay per view. So, with that said, it was always intended to be a pay per view. So, I also think that my concern is that I really feel with Tony that, more than likely this allows him to be lazy, save all the good matches, save all the really great stuff for AEW Revolution, really. So, I really think that, because I'm going to do a video where I'm going to talk about what I think would be really great for AEW Grand Slam Revolution if they were booked as pay-per-views. And I also think that this works on one of the weaknesses Tony has, which is long-term storytelling. So I'm going to give you the Grand Slam match, and then I'm going to give you the Revolution match and talk about the story and how one leads into the other, because this is all very important and definitely a skill that Tony Khan lacks, really, because you can't have just random matches, and when you have pay-per-views that are close together, you have to kind of create a part one and a part two. So, the first match that I have is Harley Cameron versus Mercedes Moné for the TBS Championship. And the reason why, I'm going to keep this match is because obviously I don't want to change anything that Tony has on the card already. Because obviously if I was working for him, why would I change matches that he's already announced, really? So, in response to that, I'm going to have a 12-woman ladder match for the TBS Championship at Revolution. And the reason why I want to do that is because obviously there's been a lot of women on the women's wrestler that don't have characters, that don't have stories, that really just don't matter that much. So automatically you want to have a ladder match to kind of reintroduce all these people again. And you also just want to allow them to speak on the microphone, give motivations. You can take 4 people from Ring of Honor and, 8 people from Dynamite, and they talk and they kind of say why this means something to them. And then you actually, go off to the races, really. But this is to reestablish new characters. And then you can kind of have a woman, win this one. It can't be Harley Cameron. Because the problem is then it's almost like what you see at the Continental Classic. I do not believe in somebody retaining or somebody losing, and then they kind of win the next thing, really, because then it's almost like, why'd you build all that? But that's what I would do. The next match is that he has Toni Storm versus Mariah May at AEW Grand Slam. In response, I would do Toni Storm versus Marina Shafir. And the reason why I would do Toni Storm versus Marina Shafir is because, Marina Shafir has to matter. She's part of the Death Riders, so why not at AEW Revolution, you make her matter, you put the title on her, and then Toni Storm and Mariah May are off of television for a couple months. Give them a bit of a break. And the reason why you also do this is because they have to really change their characters. You cannot have Mariah May and Toni Storm doing more psychological warfare with each other. It's been going on for over a year. It's time for something new, really. So I think giving the title to Marina Shafir and making her in charge of the women's division is a really great option. You got to just, not be so repetitive. The next match that I have is MJF versus Jeff Jarrett at AEW Grand Slam. In response to that, at AEW Revolution, I would have MJF versus Adam Page. Tease that they're going to go in that direction. The next match that I have is that at Grand Slam, I would do Swerve Strickland versus Ricochet in a last man standing match. And what I would do is I would honestly have them both get a double count out, because the problem is Swerve Strickland's been losing a lot, so you can't kind of just keep nerfing him, and Ricochet needs a win, really. So that's kind of the best thing to do, is that they have a last man standing match. Also, this is the Brisbane show. One of the things that AEW is known for is violent hardcore matches. So this is something that the audience would love to see, but also it says, okay, if you miss out, really, because we don't really come to Brisbane, you know what, we're going to give you what we do as far as a hardcore match. In response to that, I would do Ricochet versus Daniel Garcia for the TNT Championship at AEW Revolution. Daniel Garcia, while he's been a good champion, I don't really see a lot of him actually doing anything with that title, no feuds or whatever, really. So it makes sense to put on Ricochet and go off to the races, really. And then the other match that I would do is Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland, because for a number one contendership match at Revolution. But I'll get to that a little bit later in my list. So the next match is Buddy Matthews versus Okada for the Continental Championship. So in response to that, at Revolution, I'm going to do Brody King versus Okada, just because that's like simple and basic. And then after that, you can kind of make them a tag team and go off to the races with that, really, because I think one of the things you don't want to do is have them lose too much, but this is good like continuity. The next match that I would have is the Death Riders versus the Undisputed Kingdom for the Trios titles at AEW Grand Slam. In response to that, I'm going to do the Conglomeration versus the Death Riders. And the reason why you would do that match is because obviously with the Trios division and the tag team division, they both really struggle with having a bunch of committed teams, really. That, you need to have, like, you can't do something like take all your tag teams and add another person and make them a trios team. You have to say, okay, here are 10 teams that are tag teams, here are 10 teams that are trios teams. And what I would do, and the reason why I would do that is because obviously there's popular names. There's Adam Cole in the Undisputed Kingdom, and then you also have, like, the Conglomeration having Mark Briscoe and Orange Cassidy and Tomohiro Ishii. So it makes sense to really do that. That's good continuity. And then you're also establishing that the Death Riders are legitimate because they legitimately have, like, trios matches. This is a good way to say, establish your trios division. The next match that I would do is Shane Taylor versus Daniel Garcia. And the thing is that, as I said, Shane Taylor can talk on the microphone. He has a lot of bravado and a lot of emotions, really. So I really think that you need to put him in a match with Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia should win this one because you at least want to give him at least like one victory. And you want to give him like at least one victory. You want him to be a little established. And then you go to Ricochet versus Daniel Garcia, which I think would be a really great match. With Shane Taylor, I do want to like eventually make him a TNT champion, or I want to make him like hold a title, or even the trios titles, like on the AEW roster, not Ring of Honor, because he does have a lot of talent. He does have a lot of talk on the microphone. So in the future, I probably would do him with the AEW trios title once like the Conglomeration or Undisputed Kingdom wins that. Just because, we need to, he has a lot of good, like, talk on the microphone and a lot of, like, good, like, and he's also a big man, really. So you can't do something with Shane Taylor, like, make him don't matter. So the next match that I have is I would like to do Will Ospreay and Omega versus Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita. They've already announced that for AEW Grand Slam. In response to that, I would do Omega versus... I would actually have Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita win this because Don Callis family can't always lose. They lose too much. But in response to that, I would do Kenny Omega versus Takeshita for the international title because, the Don Callis family, they need a bunch of victories. So that makes a lot of sense to, like, do that. It's not going to hurt Omega. It's not going to hurt Ospreay. And then I'm going to do Ospreay versus Swerve at Revolution for a number one contendership match, as well as Omega and Takeshita. And the reason why I want to do that is because, like, Ospreay's been losing a bunch, Swerve has been losing a bunch. So they kind of, like, talk to each other, talk to Tony, saying, you know what? Imagine Moxley versus Ospreay, or Moxley versus Swerve, or Adam Copeland. It's going to be, like, either Ospreay and Swerve versus Moxley or Adam Copeland at AEW Dynasty. So I think this would be a really, really great match to have. Just do this one more time, make them mean something. I would actually have Swerve lose this match, and then he considers joining the Hurt Syndicate, and, you're off to the races with that one. But I think then you have, like, Ospreay versus Jon Moxley at Dynasty, because that's a good storytelling, because, like, last year you had Bryan Danielson versus Ospreay, and that's kind of when Ospreay, became more of a mainstream star because of his match with Bryan Danielson. So this is kind of good, like, continuity. And I also really think that this is a better story for Swerve. He loses too much. Maybe he decides to join the Hurt Syndicate, or he's in a slavery contract where he cannot leave and he has to, like, join them. The next match that I would do is the Hurt Syndicate versus the Acclaim at Grand Slam. It consists of Daddy Ass and Anthony Bowens. And what I would do is have Max Caster interfere. Then for the next couple of weeks, Max Caster's winning matches on Dynamite and Collision. Anthony Bowens doesn't wrestle. And then you have Bowens versus Caster in an LA Riot match at AEW Revolution. And that's really just another word for like a street fight. And you can go crazy with that. Like, I think that would be the best continuity. You know, like they could they could win titles with just Gunn and Bowens. They had so Bowens and Caster. They're gonna have their fight and they're gonna move on from that. The next match that, before I forget, because I didn't write it down, is it's Adam Copeland and Jay White versus Moxley and Claudio, I believe. Or Pac, Claudio or Pac, I don't really remember. But the thing about it is, and it's like no rules type of match. But what I want to do is that you have to have Adam Copeland versus John Moxley. And I would do like, anything goes type of match, or I would do even a lights out match. And the rule is nobody else is allowed to interfere. That's just what it is really. And you do that at Revolution. So you have that match, and that's good. But also, the reason why I would have that stipulation at Revolution is because you can't have Moxley always win by interference, because if you do that, it hurts his credibility. Don't turn him into Robert Roode in TNA Wrestling, where he was always winning every single match by cheating. You can't always do that. And then another match that I would have is that I would do Big Bill and Hobbs. Big Bill versus Hobbs in a street fight at AEW Grand Slam. And then with that said, I would have Chris Jericho on the announce team, just kind of announcing and talking about that. And then what I would do at AEW Revolution is that you have Hobbs on a 2-on-1 match with the learning tree. So this is what happens in that match. That if Hobbs wins, then at AEW Ring of Honor, Supercard of Honor, which is a April show, you're going to have Chris Jericho versus Hobbs. Hobbs has to win this match to get there. So what happens is that it's announced that that the learning tree comes out and they're going to face Hobbs. It's going to be Big Cass and Brian Keith, Big Bill and Brian Keith, and they say no, that's not going to happen really. So it's a 2-on-1 match, but it's not going to be those two. So you're going to have Brian Cage and Lance Archer, the Murder Machine, actually come down and face Hobbs. So this way, they're getting another loss, but eventually I want to have the Murder Machine hold the AEW tag team titles, or have a great match with Lashley and Shelton, but do like a 2 out of 3 falls match. Like they get one, they get like a tie, and then they get one each, then you get a tie, then you have a fourth like tiebreaker type of thing, really. But that would be a good match because you want to build Hobbs as like a babyface monster. It would also be good for him to hold the ROH title. He does double duty Ring of Honor, and he also does work on the AEW roster. And then also you want to do what you did with Mark Briscoe. You want to make him a workhorse. You want to introduce him. This is kind of like giving him a championship to prepare him for the next step. You do what NXT does with people like, Bray Wyatt or Adam Cole or a few other people who have been NXT champions, or, Seth Rollins. You prepare them by giving them a title, and then you move them over to a main event like title type of thing, really. A great example is CM Punk when he was the ECW champion, and then eventually became the world heavyweight and the WWE champion. And this is actually kind of good because you put gold around Hobbs. Jericho needs some time off, really. He needs to kind of be non-selfish and build the next generation. So I really think that that's really just the best option, to do, really. So with my card, I'm going to recap with you. So for Grand Slam, Harley Cameron versus Mercedes Moné, Toni Storm versus Mariah May, MJF versus Jeff Jarrett, Strickland versus Ricochet, Last Man Standing, Buddy Matthews versus Okada for the Continental Championship, Death Riders versus the Undisputed Kingdom for the Trios titles, Shane Taylor versus Daniel Garcia for the TNT Championship, Will Ospreay and Omega versus Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita, the Hurt Syndicate versus the Acclaimed. That consists of Bowens and Billy Gunn, and this will be for the tag team titles. Big Bill versus Hobbs in a street fight. That's the Grand Slam card. And for the Godfather, the part two, you're going to do a 12-woman. So these matches are at Revolution. It's like the Godfather part two, a great part two. A 12-woman ladder match for the TBS Championship, a contendership. So that way you show off what the women, like the women on your roster, you give them weeks, kind of build promos, you set them up really strong. Then you do Toni Storm versus Marina Shafir because Marina Shafir needs to matter. And this would be a good feud. You take Toni Storm off of television, and then you actually have her and Mariah May build like different characters. MJF versus Adam Page makes sense. Continuity. Ricochet versus Danny Garcia. You should put that title on Ricochet. Danny Garcia can kind of go through a bunch of hoops to get the title back or something like that. You do Brody King versus Okada Continental Championship. Good continuity because Buddy Matthews is going after that. Collaboration versus Death Riders. This establishes the trios division. You have to have good baby faces and good heels. You can even do something like put the titles on the conglomeration, have Shane Taylor Promotions attack them, and then you make them the heel faction. Then you kind of do like a double or nothing like match or something like that. You have Omega versus Takeshita for the International Championship. Good continuity. Hurt Syndicate versus Hook and Samoa Joe. Because, and I might have not talked about this, that for Hook and for like the Hurt Syndicate should face Hook and Samoa Joe really, because Samoa Joe has some star power. He does have a name, and this might be a better match for Dynasty because ECW. But the thing about it is the reason why I want to do this match is because Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, MVP, and also Samoa Joe, they're all like talking points. They're all draws, really. So you have to like utilize the people that you have, learn from Miro and learn from Ricky Starks. You have Ospreay versus Swerve, number one contendership match. You tell a good story. Ospreay's been losing a lot. He should lose against Takeshita and Fletcher just to make them bigger stars. Don Callis' family can't be losing too much. So you have Ospreay beat him. You have Ospreay beat Swerve. It's good storytelling. And then you have like Swerve, face the Hurt Syndicate in the future, and if he loses, he has to join the Hurt Syndicate, be sold into slavery. Because I know that's politically incorrect, but I think that would just kind of add the extra edge to sell the Hurt Syndicate as a bunch of heels. The next thing that you do is that you have Bowens versus Max Caster in a LA Riot street fight type of match. And then you do a 2-on-1 match for Powerhouse Hobbs. Instead of Learning Tree, you get the Murder Machine. That way Don Callis is taking a loss, but he has 2 wins. And also, that's more of a gauntlet and more of a hard match for Hobbs to actually do well in. It creates unpredictability. And then he actually gets past that, and then at Ring of Honor, Supercard of Honor, you have Hobbs versus Chris Jericho. And then if you have that match, that would draw people. People would be excited to see Chris Jericho lose, and then he can take like a sabbatical, be off television for like maybe like half a year or something like that, and then come back and have a new character, maybe become a single star. I mean, you make Big Bill or Big Cass like a single star or something like that, really. I'm not sure what you do with Brian Keith, but the point of it is that, people would pay money to see Chris Jericho lose the title. So you set up 2 pay-per-views. You set up the AEW Revolution with that match, and then you set up AEW Supercard of Honor with that match, because you really need to make, you have to make Ring of Honor must-see, and that would just be the way to do that. So you have to have that. So I'm really excited for my card, and and again, I wish I was working for AEW because I would definitely fix their problems or hear what they have to say about their matches or how they want to do things, and then give them the Rick James bitch slap and be like, no, stay away from the cocaine is a hell of a drug. You need to kind of take my ideas because I know how to make this shit work. So that's all I gotta say, really. I think my match card is very, very strong, and I would love to see them. I also love to see AEW adapt this, as well. Really, they still have time.